Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, well, first of all, you should recognize our guest. Carrie's back on the podcast. She recently made a change in her health and fitness lifestyle where she decided to make the change to powerlifting. So we'll talk to her a little bit about that. But before we get into that, if you really enjoy this content, I'd really appreciate it if you give a like and subscribe down below. But first of all, Carrie, what is the weather like where you're at right now? Because the weather here is 10 degrees and I'm just absolutely hating it.
It's a little warmer, about 20 degrees, but there is snow covering everything.
Yep, we have not gotten snow yet, but hey, I don't want to jinx myself. So, I mean, before I depress everyone just basically with our winter woes, which I mean, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. I mean, we're just getting started. And if that doesn't make me just want to just curl up and have some hot chocolate and not do anything for the rest of my life, I don't know what will. But well, first of all, before we get into your transformation into powerlifting, what have you been up to? Because I know the last time we looked and we talked about it, it's been almost 13 months since we last talked. What other changes have you made? I mean, I know you competed in a bodybuilding show before you made this change. So what have you been up to?
I did. I think, well, the last time we spoke was, like you said, about 13 months ago. And then I think that was in October of last year. And then in July, I competed at the Universe. I competed both in open and masters figure. And I was sixth in masters figure and ninth in open in both my classes. And then I wasn't quite satisfied with that placing. Then I decided to compete at Masters Nationals just about like 10 days later. And I actually ended up with 12th place in figure at that point, which it really, I don't know, I got to think it was a national show. I placed. There was a lot of really good women with a lot of different physiques, and it was apples and oranges. And I can't say that I'm not disappointed with my placing, especially after competing for 10 years and really making improvements. And I think the thing is I really come to a place where I like the work that I've done with my physique. And that's the one thing, or one of many things that I've learned with competing for 10 years and working and having a vision of what I want for myself, is knowing that, okay, like where my physique is right now, I'm happy with it. I've definitely brought my most complete, leanest package to stage. The chips fell where they may. Ended up falling 6th, 9th, and 12th place. And yeah, sure, I would have loved to win, loved to crack top 5, top 3, but it was what it was, and I'm not unhappy from the experience because it has brought me to a place where it's like, if I want to do it again, I can. I've got all the tools to do it, but that's what I was up to since last we spoke. And then at the end of July, after Masters Nationals, I really did a lot of soul searching and what I wanted to do. And don't get me wrong, there's part of me, I still have a goal. I in my mind, I would still love to earn my pro card with the IFBB. But part of me is like, well, maybe I just need to go back to not so much the drawing board, but do something else for a couple of years. And one of those things that I had wanted to do, actually, I kind of wanted to get into it 5 or 6 years ago, but I chose to stay focused on bodybuilding. That was powerlifting. And I had a friend of mine who, she passed away about a week before Masters Nationals. And she was always very supportive of me. And actually, she's competed in both bodybuilding and powerlifting. Her and her husband both, and they're both personal trainers, or they were personal trainers. And she was there with me. We competed a couple times together. We were friends. And she was very encouraging. And her words, it just, after she passed away, it really hit me of how quick, how short, how fleeting life is. And I thought to myself, I'm like, you know what, Carrie, you might not have accomplished what you want, your end goal, with competitively, at least with bodybuilding, but I think I need to take some time, just a couple years probably, competing powerlifting, see where it takes me. And then I feel like I can always return to the bodybuilding stage. And by then, I don't know, they've added yet another division. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple years how all the divisions, if the look evolves again. I see that they've added, not necessarily that I would want to compete in women's bodybuilding, but they've added women's bodybuilding back to the Olympia, which I think is great. But it'll be interesting to see how the looks of the different divisions evolve now that they've added another division.
Especially when it comes to women's bodybuilding. I mean, that's basically what physique was becoming, was women's bodybuilding. So, the moment that they announced women's bodybuilding was coming back, I was like, okay, maybe that should be interesting to see, what happens with physique then, because it's just ever evolving and ever changing. But I always got to say too, tall people don't get no respect when it comes to bodybuilding, and that just makes me being 6'3" myself. I mean, yeah, I know tall people. It's like it's a never ending struggle. Where I mean, you are one of the tallest people that I've had on. I had one girl who was 6'2", doesn't compete anymore, and then I've had a couple, like 5'11", and then another 6 foot. But yeah, tall people, that's a struggle in and of itself, because with the average bodybuilder, they tend to be on the shorter side too. So that's a whole different podcast that, I mean, I could talk an hour about on length at, and it's that's just a whole different scenario. But getting into powerlifting, like we were talking about before we started recording, I mean, that is, a whole different type of working out. It's a whole different type of nutrition. It's, you basically uproot, and everything about it is different than bodybuilding. When you were getting started in powerlifting, was that a concern for you at all? Or were you excited to maybe, be able to eat more, be able to do different things?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was excited about being able to eat more. Some of the things, to me, like my body, I've conditioned it for isolation exercises. For bodybuilding, I've conditioned it to, well, like I said, isolation, to be able to develop my physique, whereas powerlifting is like everything working together. And to me, the transition to help, well, to develop strength, within my body, to help develop strength within my tendons, to be able to just be stronger. Because before it was about development, it was about hypertrophy. And now, when I first started, I've only been powerlifting August, September, October, November. I've only been powerlifting for not even 3.5 months now. So I know that I still have, like, physically a lot of transitioning adaptation within myself, even though I've actually picked my first meet January 18th.
What was the hardest thing when you were getting into the workouts? Because they are so much I mean, they're vastly different. Like, the biggest thing that I hear whenever we have bodybuilders and powerlifters on is, with bodybuilding, it's about the aesthetic, it's about the look, not so much as, lifting the heavy weights, where that's a big misconception that people have, where they might walk up to a bodybuilder and they're just surprised and shocked, where, they're not lifting as much as someone who, doesn't look like they work out as much, being a powerlifter. What was that like?
I was a little nervous at first, because I was like, I don't want to lose this. I worked for 10 years to develop an aesthetic physique. And I think that one of the things that I was concerned about the most is, like, I don't have to get fat, do I? And I hate to put it like that. I'm not sure how else to put it, but and now, since I've been able to get into a little bit more, speak to some powerlifters who have been in it for years, there's been a couple of women who, well, my friend Michelle, who passed away, and she always had a really, she was in good condition. She was always in good condition. But there were also people like Steffi Cohen, who I feel like if she would have been around like 10, 15 years ago, like before I started getting into bodybuilding, I probably would have gravitated toward powerlifting first, to be honest with you, because it was the look of bodybuilding that developed muscular physique that drew me to it. And in powerlifting, the thing is, there are still women like Steffi Cohen, who she has a very well developed muscular physique, and she's just really strong. It's a hybrid. She's hybrid.
Yeah, for anyone out there who's not aware, I'll have a photo pop up of her right now. But yeah, it is ridiculous. I've seen some of those videos where like when she was training with like Bradley Martin and some of those guys, and yeah, it is ridiculous that so much power comes out of that small of a package. I mean, that's one thing that I have generally found with powerlifters is that I mean, that's why I found it even more interesting when you said you were going to go into powerlifting because powerlifters tend to also be on the shorter side. I mean, the ones that we've had on, 5 feet tall and they're just built, like I'll just say brick shit houses basically, where I mean they're just built, just wide and just everything is just compacted so small. So yeah, that's definitely a fascinating part about powerlifting. But I mean, the nutrition aspect is so important when it comes to bodybuilding. But powerlifting, I'm not going to say it's a little bit more relaxed, but it tends to not be as restrictive. Was that something like you said before, like you didn't want to get fat, but still, it must be nice to be able to know that you can eat a little bit more now. You don't have to worry so much about it.
Exactly, yeah, and getting back into that, and it's not so much that now my diet, I still have a particular diet, and is still similar to my bodybuilding diet. I can tell you that I eat more beef now, more red meat. My carbs are a little bit higher now, but I still eat a bunch of veggies. California blend is one of my favorite mixes right now with the cauliflower and the broccoli and the carrots. Um, but as far as also, I guess one of the things to mention it too that was a little bit of a difference to me is the training. Whereas in bodybuilding, I would have not very long of a rest period between my sets. With powerlifting, and I've been working. My main coach is Matt Wiedmer, and I also have, and I can get into this a little bit more as we go on, another very well known coach who I work with once a week now. And um, to me, it was really difficult at first because I'll wait 5, 6, 7 minutes between sets now. And that was very difficult for me to not try to keep pushing. Like, say, after I did, I'm just going to throw this out there, 5 reps at 85% on bench. And I was told you need to wait like 5, 6 minutes before we go again. And after about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, I'm like, all right, let's go, because I had conditioned myself. And that's another thing too is we spoke about cardio a little bit earlier. I'm still keeping the cardio in there because I don't want to be huffing and puffing. I mean, I do stuff like wheelbarrow, sled pushes, sled pulls, things like that to keep my cardio up, and also the treadmill in the background. It's especially right now with it getting into the winter months. I definitely want to keep up my cardio.
During the winter, I mean, when you're just sitting around all the time, yeah, you definitely, yeah, you need that cardio in order to, help pass some time too. I mean, that's what I can guarantee. That's basically the reason that I'll be doing it during the winter. But yeah, it's just so fascinating how these two sports vary and differ because even me myself, like after I get done with 5 sets of doing something, the most I do take is 2 minutes. That's like my max. We're in between doing a different workout, and even like you said, in between sets, 30, 45 seconds. Same here with me. So yeah, I could not imagine waiting around 5 or 7 minutes. I'd go crazy. That would definitely be an adjustment. So how long do your workouts take now that you're taking these long breaks?
They'll last anywhere between, well, depending on what I'm training the day, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. Whereas before, when I was bodybuilding, without cardio included, it would last maybe an hour, maybe an hour. I would get in there, I'd do my thing. I'm there for business. That's my business meeting, and I conduct my business, and then I'm out. So
Yeah, again, I mean, just it's a whole completely different lifestyle, but was it hard for you think your body to get adjusted to it? Because if you're used to, just going for that aesthetic look where you're not lifting, your max effort as much as you are with powerlifting, have your joints been bothering you? Has there been a difficulty adjusting to that where you're going to be training a lot harder and a lot heavier and your body has been used to the last 10 years, maybe not doing it as much as you are doing it now?
yes, you hit the nail on the head there. Um, not so much anymore, but I do have some pain not in all my joints, but specifically in my elbow and a little bit in my shoulder, but mostly my elbow. I've got pain through my forearms, which I've also been doing some grip strength training as well, which I mean, you kind of get that anyway. But one of the things is like a lot of the times when I'm holding the bar, I'm squeezing it like I'm going to bend it in half. And that was something that I didn't do when I was bodybuilding. That was something that my body's like, what are you doing to us? And so that's something that my body is still kind of adjusting to. And I know they'll probably always be just the nature of the training, some soreness, but it has subsided somewhat. But it was like fire at first through my forearms, and just really intensely painful. Not like I've injured it painful, but definitely that I've pushed myself to a place where I haven't yet been before.
Do you do any of your old bodybuilding exercises, or have you went completely over to powerlifting, or do you still like to keep a little bit of that bodybuilding routine in your workouts?
I do actually. What I'll do, and I train 4 days a week, sometimes five. I'll have a day where if it's going to be squat, if it's going to be bench, if it's going to be deadlift, I will train that exercise. One of many different variations. Sometimes I'll use chains or bands, and then I'll max effort like maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks. But I actually work more the accessory first. Like say if I'm going to bench and I'll use bands, then immediately afterwards I'll train my triceps. I'll train my triceps. I'll train my back as well. If I'm going to deadlift, I'll be training my hamstrings, my glutes. And that's one thing too is my coach is he's been doing it for years, and he's the head trainer at Beat Training in Cincinnati, and he really was one where when I first met him, I was like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing, and I feel very fortunate to be training with him. But he is one where we use the Conjugate method, and that to me, as coming into it with a bodybuilding mentality, was is a little confusing at first. I actually haven't totally wrapped my head around the concept, but I have a lot better understanding than when I first did. Whereas when I was bodybuilding, to compare, I'd be like, all right, today's back day. And I would work different areas of my back, different variations on reps, sets, and that was that. Different exercises, maybe some weeks, but I had my meat and potatoes, I guess to use an analogy, my bread and butter exercises. Whereas with powerlifting, 1 week we could do a variation, but we won't do those same exercises like as far as accessory goes the next week. And so to me, it was like, oh, I've got a lot to learn, because it was like, it seemed a little, I hate to use the word haphazard, but that's the first word that comes to mind when I think about the method that we were using, because I'm like, how am I supposed to? Oh, okay. Well, to me, I understand it like, well, in some ways it's like a puzzle, like bodybuilding was, but instead of just performing the lifts, we break them down into the variations and the accessories, and then put everything together and actually grow the different parts stronger, and it improves the lift. I've really, really been surprised too. Well, I say surprised, but I've been able to keep going up, and my PR keeps going up, with only being able to, or not only being able to, but with only maxing out like once every 3 to 4 weeks. It's gone up every time, and Matt had said to me, he's like, these are kind of beginner gains, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. These are kind of beginner gains, and I have no frame of reference, so I just go out there and I do what he says to do, and I almost kind of, I'm in the mindset of, is that good? Is that good? And I feel like it kind of comes across at times that there's a false sense of modesty, but I've been enjoying the training, and I'm like, okay, if you say that that's good, you've been doing this for like 20 years. Okay. That's good then.
Having a coach is just such an important thing when it comes to either of those sports, bodybuilding or powerlifting. But I mean, the tall aspect is just another thing that I just find so fascinating. Another tall question because I mean, I just think about just doing squats and being someone who's my height. It's so much difficult or so much different and difficult than someone else maybe who's a little bit shorter doing it. Do you find that you have to do different techniques and different ways in order to get the best results as opposed to someone like a Steffi Cohen who is a lot on the shorter side?
Um, no, not really. I mean, just I would think more it's individually the body mechanics are different. Well, I say different, but I mean so as in more like how you're built conformationally. Um, Standing next to my husband is 5'3.5". The other day it was kind of funny. We're talking to my coach Matt. We stood next to each other, put our arms down by our sides, and I'll be darned if my husband's and I's the ends of our hands were the same, which meant that I had like super long arms, and that there's some advantages to being taller too. Like when I'm deadlifting, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's any lift that is particularly my favorite, at least right now, because I'm enjoying learning about all of the lifts. But definitely having an advantage sometimes can give somebody, especially myself, like a kind of a propensity to go, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like deadlifting.
The biggest problem that I had with the long arms was that when I'm bench pressing though, it's like you got to go down almost like a full foot more than some other people were, and then just going all the way up where you're just like, I mean, I had a friend in high school who he was a lineman and he was only like 5'8" or something like that, but just seeing him just because he already was bigger just from being having more weight, so he would just pop him up, whereas me, you got to go all the way down, then it's like you're pressing the world up basically. Where I mean, yeah, it is fascinating, how different people of different sizes, it is the same type of training, but it also it can be different at times as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree definitely. It has its advantages.
Oh, well, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't trade this for anything. I always tell my friends, especially when it comes to, let's be honest, if you're 6'3", I mean, you get away with a lot more where you're able to help people out, Yeah, it's a lot better. I love being this height, but sometimes, there just like everything in life, there's drawbacks to everything. But before you're going into this first powerlifting meet, what area do you think has improved the most in the 3 months since you started powerlifting, and what area do you think needs the most work?
Oh, it's funny that you ask that. I would say my strength, and in particular, my strength in my glutes. When I'm deadlifting, if I miss, it's because of my glutes. That's something that I mean, I, f- I found out when I could push weight in bodybuilding. Like say, for instance, if I was doing a glute push, I worked up to, and I apologize because I don't exactly know the exact weight for this, but 645 plates per side glute push. And I could do that for 10 reps. That's strong. I mean, I think most people would admit that that's really strong. And yet, when I'm powerlifting and I'm deadlifting my glutes, that's what will make me miss the lift. So that there was another thing too. I was like, well, shoot, I thought my glutes were already strong, but they weren't strong in the way that would, well, they're still strong, but they weren't strong. And as I progressed to heavier and heavier weight, that I can lock out, like say, for instance, that deadlift, because they're not quite strong enough yet, but they're progressively getting stronger.
One interesting thing that I found so fascinating about powerlifters is that, before these meets, they get themselves so amped up and they get themselves, so excited, and a lot of them really take themselves to a place where, they just get angry at the weights. And then, I mean, I've had guests on where I've seen videos of them and it looks like they're possessed basically when they're about to go and get those max lifts on. Have you found that easy to sort of go to that place that you have to be at when you're trying to max out?
Yes, yes. There is wherever you need to go in your head, whether or not you need to like imagine that you're just, I don't know, fighting off a horde of zombies or you're a gladiator in an arena. Um, Sometimes too, it can having someone's memory or someone's encouragement behind you can also help as well. And two things I can think of is a little bit of a sad note, but I'll kind of transition into a much happier one. I had to say goodbye to one of my cats about a month ago, and he was one who he was closer to my husband. He was our little buddy, and we have two, or we had two, and he was just, with animals, they've got this sense about them. If you're happy, especially if you're not feeling good, they would comfort you. And so he passed on a Thursday, and that Sunday we went in and we're like, all right, Elliot was his name. All right, this is for Elliot. I ended up PRing on both deadlift and squat that day because in my head I was just like, this is for him. This is for Elliot. This is for Elliot. So yeah, to draw inspiration from that, and it wasn't so much I'm sad because he was gone, but I'm like, this is my buddy. I'm going to do it for him. Like I'm I don't know. I just had the power within me. So then, um, going on from there, I've been able to have the wonderful, and I know I'm lucky, or fortunate when I say this, to be able to work with Louie Simmons once a week. And it was kind of funny because at first, it's just he's worked with thousands of people. He's trained some of the strongest people in the world, some of the strongest people I think of all time. Guys like Dave Hoff, who I think just did over 1,300-pound bench press. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And so I was like, all right, this is cool. I know that I'm in a very fortunate spot, and I think to me one of the coolest parts of it was having him there and having his voice in my ear. Like I stepped underneath the bar to squat, I unracked it, and all of a sudden I hear this craggy voice, "Stay tight," and I'm like, holy moly, this is Louie Simmons, and it was just like laser focus. Laser focus, because I had seen when it first came out on Netflix, West Side versus the World, and all the crazy guys who Louie will tell stories about, like Chuck Vogelpohl, Matt Runnell, and some of the guys that are training there now. And it was very, very matter of fact. And
I mean, powerlifting, it's a different breed of people. I mean, their personalities can be vastly different from the bodybuilding community. Have you found that it's been easy for you to integrate yourself into that different style of I mean, they're a different breed of people. Do you find that it's been easy for you to integrate yourself into that community?
well, yeah, and not to say that it wasn't easy to connect with the people who were bodybuilding, but in powerlifting, I think compared to bodybuilding, in bodybuilding, it's aesthetic. It's based off comparing different physiques and, your development. Whereas in powerlifting, yeah, you could get called for depth, you could get red lighted, but it's either you lift it or you don't. So while, yeah, I mean, there is still some ego in it. No, I don't think quite as much, as it can be with bodybuilding. I felt like the people are very welcoming. They were very welcoming, and I'm more naturally shy myself. And one of the first powerlifting meets that I ever went to, I had this goal in my mind. I'm like, all right, Carrie, I want you to at least introduce yourself to 3 different people and make these connections. And it's funny too how you're able to make the connections with people, and so knows so and so, and there's a lot of uh, crossover, and at least who knows who, and people who've been powerlifting for years are like, oh yeah, that's so and so is a good friend of mine, and they've been a bodybuilder for 10 years. So we all like to lift. It's just that we've got some differences in the end goal.
Yeah, it's just another. I can't say it even better more than with bodybuilding too. It really is a tight knit community that I love to ask. All the bodybuilders that come on. How important is that? Because you just look on Instagram and just the positivity that people have. For others' posts. Like, oh my God, you look amazing, keep it up. But that also applies to powerlifting. But the most interesting thing about powerlifting that I was just so fascinated by is the smelling salt. Have you done smelling salt since you started in powerlifting?
No, I have not. I have not done smelling salt. I've been offered it. Actually, I have a equipment sponsorship with Country Crush, and they sent me some smelling salt. I haven't tried it yet. I know I will at some point. I'd like to try it, to experience it. The advice I was given, at least, I know some people tend to use it a lot. They're just like, use it towards the end of, especially if you're using it first, the end of your lifts, because it tends to give you a headache. But it will also help get you into a place mentally where you're stronger.
I forgot what her name was, but she goes by Quadzilla on Instagram. She has the biggest quads I've ever seen in my entire life, and she does it like regularly. And I always just found that fascinating because I always, growing up, you'd see all those football movies where the guy gets hurt and then they give him smelling salt and he wakes back up. And I was like, oh wow, powerlifters do that. I didn't understand why, but then as I started talking to more and more powerlifters, I get why it is, but going into now that you're going to be going into your first powerlifting meet, a question that I like to ask, the guests that I've had on that have done multiple powerlifting meets is that, it's a sport similar to bodybuilding in that it really depends on how you show up and how you do that day. Where you could look, just absolutely amazing for a bodybuilding show the night before, but then if you just something goes wrong in your sleep or just naturally just you fill out a little bit more. The same goes with powerlifting though, where you could have, the day before you could max out on everything and you could hit all of your lists, but then maybe just because something you ate or maybe something with your sleep schedule, you go to the meet and you're not able to do those certain amount of lifts. Or how are you preparing yourself mentally at all for that fact that it really is just like they say with football, any given Sunday, it's any given competition, anything could happen.
Yes. Now, going into my first one, I'm really admittedly not that knowledgeable, but I know at some point I'm going to start deloading, just kind of backing off a little bit on the weight or the intensity, and then to be able to ramp it back up again, so then I can be able to perform maximally at the meet.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the bodybuilding where you do deload at the end and you just get the best out of it. But when you're doing these lifts and you're at these meets and the crowd and the energy, but being at the gym where there are sometimes, people that come to like hype you up, do you find that you're able to block that out, or do you use that as motivation? Because for me personally, I'm one of those people where I don't really find that much motivation when people are, yelling and cheering. Being a baseball pitcher, you kind of had to learn how to block that stuff out. But what is your strategy with that?
That's an interesting question, Ryan. And to me, I hear certain voices in my head. Like when my coach Matt is cueing me, I hear his voice. As far as everybody else, it's more of a feeling of energy. Like if you've got 12 guys screaming at you, go, 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 it's a feeling of the energy that's behind that. Where, when I hear a coach go, stay tight, or he'll send me a cue and I'll hear that, but it's almost like a one-to-one connection with that person. And I hear him during my lift, but then that's it. So then like I said, I use the energy of everybody else or anyone who would be yelling for me. But it's just it's focused. It's focused on my job at that point.
when it comes to motivation, yeah, I mean, if someone's yelling and screaming at me, I just usually tell them, I was like, dude, you're hurting my ears. I really don't. That's why, another thing that I find funny is that a lot of these people, I mean, you get pat on the back. I mean, they just basically, they beat you up a little bit before you go on to those things. I'd be one of those people where I'd be like, ow, you hurt my back. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this lift now, because you see them all the time and they're just smacking them on the back. They're just getting them ready. Do you experience that, or do they sort of leave you alone in that? Because I know some people love that, and other people, they don't like that so much.
I can't really say whether or not I like it because I haven't really experienced it yet. Uh, my coach Matt is very intuitive, and I feel like if it was something that he felt like would help me, he would do it. Yeah, I mean, if I know, like going into it, if we've practiced it, if it's like, all right, we're gonna do this, and on the back, and let's go, and that's part of it, then that would be cool. But just for it to be kind of thrown in with a couple hard back slaps, where it could be very much like you said, where I'm like, all I can focus on right now is this stinging impression of a hand on my back. And it would, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see as we progress into the training, to see if that's something that becomes part of my setup for the lift, or what have you.
You see so many of these videos of, men that are maybe, a foot to half a foot taller than some of these females and weigh a good 100 pounds more than them, just unloading on them, like just smack them in the back. And I'm like, okay, that's like how you break someone's back, basically. And I'm just like, oh, those poor people. And I had that happen to me once, where I was just like, I could barely even get the lift. I could barely even get my starter weight out, just because my back was but they did it way too much. Like, this was a big guy, and he just unloaded on me. And I was like, okay, that didn't do anything. It's like, now you accomplish the mission of not getting me to think about the lift, because I'm thinking about, like you were talking about, that pain in my back. But yeah, it's these meets are just such a fascinating place to be, because it just, for someone who's into bodybuilding or is, follow bodybuilding, it's just a completely different, opposite world. But a question that I ask, all of my health and fitness guests, I'm pretty sure I asked you about last podcast, but sleep is one of the most important, if not the most important thing when it comes to recovery. I know with bodybuilding, at times sleep can be harder to acquire, just because when you're all dieted down, your body just wants food, and it can be hard to get some rest because you're just achy and tired. But how has your sleep schedule gotten better, or has it gotten worse now that you've made this transition to powerlifting?
It has gotten better. It has gotten better. Now, there's been some times where if I get some soreness, like ibuprofen, Tylenol just doesn't quite cut it, and my sleep will be a little bit disturbed. But pretty much, if I've had a really particularly heavy or hard training day, I'll sleep like a rock. I will, unless I have to get up at a particular time, I'll sleep for as long as my body wants to sleep, and then I'll get up. But yeah, my sleep it's definitely improved.
I've always said there's rarely a better feeling in the world than after you get a proper night amount of sleep after a hard workout, where you wake up just feeling like a superhero. But you said that you train 4 to 5 times a week. Is that basically on par of how much you train with bodybuilding, or is it a little bit less?
A little bit less. A little bit less. I've noticed. Well, another one of the things that I've noticed is that I don't necessarily need to train as frequently because of the volume of work I'm doing, and how I'm doing it. I don't need to train 6 days a week. 4 or 5 days a week. At least 5 days a week right now is considered a lot, but I'm always doing something on the days that I don't train. Like I'll be stretching, or not a whole lot of stretching, but I'll be stretching a little bit. Like, that's another thing too, is when I was bodybuilding, I would stretch between my sets. When I'm powerlifting, it's more so I still integrate that, but it'll be at the end. At the end, and I don't necessarily stretch when I'm cold. I mean, that just makes sense. It just kind of sets yourself up for injury, and everything's lengthened, so your propensity to get hurt is going to be increased. But yeah.
Again, it's so different. But with I mean, there's so many divisions when it comes to powerlifting. I mean, we've had Canadian powerlifters come on, we've had American powerlifters, and there's just so many different federations and I mean, it's vastly more intrinsic than bodybuilding. I think when it's just there's stuff where you have to there's powerlifting meets where you have to wear that suit that they make you wear. There's other powerlifting ones where you don't have to. There's powerlifting ones where you might not have to go down as far as other. What was it like deciding what powerlifting meet you wanted to do? Was it sort of just a kind of like a job application process where you're just out there searching for something that you find would be the best fit for you?
It was a combination of what my coach trained and also what I want for myself. Um, and my coach has lifted with like a squat suit, bench shirt, but I'm training raw. I'll train raw classic, which the most I will use when I'm lifting, depending on the federation association, are wrist wraps and knee sleeves and a belt. I mean, that's the most that I will lift. I have tried just for the sake of feeling what it feels like a bench shirt. Whew, that adds a lot to your lift, but holy moly, the the next day, and it was interesting because it didn't. And this is not to say that it's detracting me from using one in the future, but my triceps, the back of my arms, and my lats were all bruised up, like somebody just beat me. Like it's just I just got beat up, and I'm like, this didn't hurt when it was happening, but it was definitely something to I don't know. It was you need to learn how to use that equipment, and that's part of learning the powerlifting too. And I think what drew me to raw lifting was it's you. It's not wearing a deadlift suit or a bench shirt where you could possibly have the assistance of a couple 100 pounds. If you're benching raw, if you're lifting raw, that's you benching. It's not assisted lifts.
Yeah, I gotta say you're the third person on this show who's said that same thing with it hurting, your lats basically and your triceps after using that. So I don't know I don't know what that is, but I've never tried to wear one myself, and it's kind of scared me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. After all these guests have come on and told those stories, but what is one thing about bodybuilding that you miss, and what is one thing about bodybuilding that you don't miss?
Oh, good question. What is one thing that I miss about bodybuilding? Um, well, and it's more of I guess it's more of an ego thing, but the the and I still have got the definition in my shoulders and my arms, and I'm still eating really well, but probably the focus on aesthetics. I miss that because it's in powerlifting. It's like, well, you don't need to be pretty.
She still got it. She still got it. Show us the guns real quick. Let's see the guns. Yeah. Yeah, are you kidding me? Yeah, she's still. Yeah, everyone, she's still got it. Look at that. That's yeah, she's still got it. She's still yeah. That's gonna take a. I know that's gonna take. Yeah, she's got the. Yeah, she's got it. She's embarrassing everyone I know. I mean, being that tall and having arms like that. Good God, but yeah, it really is just a process of just learning that. But yeah, I could imagine the aesthetic thing the aesthetic thing as well. But what is one thing that you don't miss about bodybuilding?
Probably the rigorous schedule and the what's the word I'm looking for? Um, well, the amount of training, the how frequently I had to train, the things that all the cardio and the volume of everything, and there's some wiggle room with powerlifting and what you can eat and how often you train. Whereas bodybuilding, I feel like, at least to what I did with it, it was you were lifting 6 days a week, especially getting ready for a show. It was something always in the gym 7 days a week. It was practicing posing every day. It was your cardio. It was You've got to have something to eat every 2.5 hours. And with powerlifting, it's not so much that I don't have to still eat on a schedule, but there's a lot more play to things, a lot more freedom.
If we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at? I mean, in your life. I mean, we'll have you back on in another year because we've started something already. I mean, it's been 13 months. We'll cut it down a month next time when we have you on. But where would you like to be at when it comes to your powerlifting journey and just when it comes to your overall life and health and fitness? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Oh, competitively, I would say state and national record holder, possibly world record holder. We will see how things go because I've checked out some of the world records with some of the federations, and with what I'm lifting right now, I'm knocking on some doors. Like just speaking numbers in general, my first meet on bench, I want to open with 200 pounds. And I've already got right now 175 for reps, for 5 reps. So I think that 200 pounds is, for me, to open at is not unheard of. So a year from now, when we talk, um, I want to have myself with a state record, national record, and we will see, possibly world record, but that's the goal. And just keep going at it. I'm not exactly sure quite. Being so new to this, I'm like, all right, I wanted to earn my pro card when I was a bodybuilder. Let's see what it takes to become a professional in powerlifting.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. But you mentioned it a little bit before. You mentioned your best bench, but what are your best overall lists for all three of the main categories?
My best squat is 315. And that's really interesting too because I got 315 pretty easy. And then for whatever reason, and I was happy because my coach had a lot of faith in me. We went up like 60 pounds, and I missed it. but 315 squat, 405 deadlift, and actually 228 bench. And I got that 228 bench when Louie Simmons was spotting me.
That must have been a cool feeling then, having someone who's that big in the sport see you do that. Well, and let's be honest, that probably added all that extra adrenaline too. So I mean, you might want to have him at every single one of your events. Like I always said, there was always that time in the gym where if there was an attractive girl, running on the treadmill at our high school and at our college, we had. I don't know if this was on purpose, but they'd have the treadmills right in front of like the bench press, or they'd have them right in front of like the major lifts. So you'd see guys out there, just lifting, more than they probably ever could in their life because they just want to impress people around them. So yeah, but everyone has misconceptions about everything in life. I mean, with bodybuilders, I love to talk about, misconceptions that people have about bodybuilding. But what do you think is one misconception that the general public has about powerlifting that isn't true?
Powerlifting, that, well, along the same lines as bodybuilders, is that it's all about, or they assume that it's about chemical enhancement, and not that's not true. The federation that I'm choosing to compete in is drug tested. It's RPS, and I don't know. I mean, if some people choose to use it, that's a personal choice that they're going to make. But I would say that that's probably one of the things that I hear the most about powerlifting is that, oh, they're just juicing, they're just chemically enhanced. And
You mentioned before that you have some sponsors. Would you like to give anyone a shout out before we wrap things up?
oh, absolutely. Thank you very much to Country Crush. They're my equipment sponsor. They sent me wrist wraps. They're going to send me a belt. They sent me that. I haven't yet tried it yet, but the Brain Crush, the ammonia, the smelling, the smell, and that sounded really kind of amateurish, but I haven't used it yet. So, but yeah, my equipment sponsor, Ray Cody, he has been one of those guys that we met through mutual friends, and he heard my backstory about my transformation, my weight loss transformation, and then I told him I was getting into powerlifting, and he's like, Okay, let me send you some stuff. And his stuff, www.countrycrush.net. He's got a whole list of wrist wraps and belts and lifting equipment, handles, grip strength handles, just a whole host of variety, really good equipment. And just, I'm very, very fortunate to have been with him. Also, I would like to thank Nuclear. Actually, it's Walden Sports Nutrition, but they make pre-workout that has a nootropic in it, and they use black tea, as a source of caffeine. But I tell you what, that Nuclear, I take it before I train, and it just gives me just enough energy, but it also gives me focus because of the nootropics in it. I've never really, I don't get a crash from it. And I don't think my body's ever attenuated it to where it doesn't work the same time every time that I take it. So I would like to thank Country Crush, and I'd like to thank Walden Sports Nutrition, AJ and Joe Walden.
Yeah, and that's again, shout out to all those guys. And if anyone is interested in hearing about, her weight loss backstory, I'll leave a link to the first podcast that we did with her. It really is, amazing to hear, and I'll have a picture up there of that. I mean, it was just so inspiring. And again, we cannot thank you enough for coming back on the podcast. I really appreciate it, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your powerlifting journey. I think you're gonna do great, and definitely let me know what that smelling salt was like the first time you tried, because I've wanted to try some myself. I've said, if a lot of people want me to, I might do it on air with the next time I have a powerlifter on or something like that, just experience what it's like. But I'm afraid, I don't know what's gonna happen, so we'll see if that happens. But again, you guys, go and give her a follow on her Instagram page. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And thank you so much again for coming on. It was great having you on again.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to having another follow-up interview again in the future.
Absolutely. I would love that. So we'll have her on in a year, and God, 2020. I'm getting older. It's really starting to depress me now. Jesus. Yeah, this is talking about. Yeah, the last time we talked, that was a full 13 months ago, and it feels like it was yesterday. So, yeah, time is definitely flying by. But everyone, and just like we're talking about, life, can be over in an instant. So everyone, enjoy your lives, and everyone, just have a great day. And everyone who's out there living in the southern part of the United States, enjoy your winter. While I am just going to be sitting here, just freezing my butt off. But again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.